for everyone in the audience, this first question is one that is really common in interviews, right? We hear this a lot from employers that may want to know, in your journey to your current position, what has been your greatest success and your biggest challenge? And is there anything that you would do differently? And I'm just going to hand over the microphone.
Well, thanks for, well, I guess somebody had to be put on the spot, but, so yes, my name is Alma Young, and I am the Systemic Change Organizing Coordinator with the United Farmworkers Foundation. My pronouns are she, her, and is that did I just answer the question?
Yeah, you did,
okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if you wanted to know more, but, so in the journey to my current position, the greatest success was that even though it was a big change from education to nonprofit, I will say that my greatest success was that I followed something that was my passion anyway, which was working with underserved populations, particularly farm workers, because I was a farm worker myself. So in a way, I didn't really have to try that hard because that was something that it was easier to transition. But yes, also another greatest success was that I was already extremely involved in the farm worker community here in Georgia, as well as all over the country. So that has helped me tremendously in transitioning, like I said, from education to a nonprofit, and also transitioning from working exclusively in Georgia to working all over the country. And the biggest challenge for me is that the organization that I work for, United Farm Workers Foundation, is a sister organization of the United Farm Workers, which is the union that was started by Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta in California. So because the UFW and the UFW Foundation were based out of California, my biggest challenge, and I was just telling Rosalyn this, is that my work time is mostly on Pacific time, so I'm 3 hours behind in time from them. So I get to start a little bit later, but I also get to end my day a little bit later, which is like 8, 9 o'clock at night. But I will say that's been the biggest challenge because I focused on a passion rather than, I guess, a place or a specific career. There wasn't really many challenges for me because it was really a smooth transition, but I wouldn't do anything differently. Every single thing that I've experienced, good and bad in my career, has helped me in one way or another. So for me, I wouldn't change anything.
It sounds like you've had to be really flexible, though. Yeah. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. Again, my name is Rosalyn Castaño. Pronouns she, her, hers. I would say I had two big, great successes. The first one, similar to Alma, is I found a career that I'm passionate about. So if you're unfamiliar with speech-language pathology, my field has everything to do with speaking, the language that we use to think, and if you're in the medical field, even swallowing. And it covers from newborns all the way to elderly. In all settings, I can work in a school, I can work in a hospital, I can get summers off. So anywhere I go in the US, like I can have a job. And so I love that not only does it offer that ability for me, because I get tired of things, like I always want to learn and grow. I can switch it up and still stay within my career, which I think is awesome, and I love what I do. The other success that I had was I was able to learn, or actually develop the confidence to start my own business, which is something that I've never seen anybody in my family do. And it was really scary to do, but as I went throughout my career, I had met other independent contractors, and I said, well, if they can do it, then I can do it. I researched online, I asked them questions, and so I developed that confidence to do it, which the agency I was working for before, essentially what they were doing is, they contract me out to a school district and then they take a huge cut. And I was like, well, why would I let them do that when I can do that for myself just by starting a business? So it was scary, but I figured if other people could do it, then I could too. So if you're held back by fear, research, talk to people, but you can do it too. One of my biggest challenges was I didn't have any support going to college. I was the first in my family to go to college. My mom did her best, but she was a single mom, housekeeper, didn't know anything about the American education system. So I didn't have any support, but I did look around at my classmates at school, and they all went to college. So I was like, oh, that's what I have to do to be successful. Let me go to college. But my freshman year, I had no idea. I didn't know what the supports were. I flunked out with a 1.3 GPA. And during that year where, they kick you out and you have to go, I had a daughter, and I was able to learn, like, okay, what do I want to do? How am I going to pick myself up? What kind of career am I going to do so I can provide for my daughter? So there is success and failure, like Alma was saying, like, even when you think you're failing, that leads you and propels you to something else and propels you to finding a career, which is what happened. I ended up working as an interpreter and interpreted for a speech language pathologist, and I didn't even know that it was a career. And so by failing and having to work, I learned about my field, and that pushed me forward. The only thing I would do differently in my path is I would be more intentional about my education. And what I mean is I went back to school when my daughter was about a year, and I went to a very expensive private liberal arts college, and I honestly look back and think I should have done my basics at a community college where it was cheaper, because now those student loans, when they charge $50,000 a year, I should have done that way cheaper. So if that's an option for you guys, definitely look into that. But that's probably one of the things I would change, because paying that back kind of hurts.
Thank you for your honesty. Yeah, and it sounds like you saw the difficulties and they became challenges and opportunities. Thank you.
Okay, everyone, I'm going to try to talk through this mess. My name is Phenix Culbertson. I am the president of MESA. I also am a student career counselor and career opportunities here at Valdosta State University. I would say my biggest successes are, one, actually becoming employed at Valdosta State University. Until I came here, I never really knew what my passion was. I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, and I have a master's degree in forensic science. So when I interviewed for this position, I was asked, why higher education? You have this background in criminal justice and forensics. You've worked in law offices and as a probation officer. So now why do you want to be a student career counselor? And so the best answer I could give was that I just knew that I wanted to support people. And in doing my job as a career counselor, and even when I was a probation officer for juveniles, I still was supporting people, but just in a different capacity. And so when I interviewed for the position, my pitch essentially was that I am a product of this office. I am a product of this university. And so who better to motivate students and to give them that advice than somebody who was where they currently are just a few years ago? Because I'm probably very close in age to many of the students in here. And so getting at Valdosta State University, I would say becoming an employee here was my biggest success. After that, I would say being admitted into the doctoral program at Valdosta State University. Hopefully next year in May, I will be Dr. Culbertson. That will, at that point, will have been my biggest success when I become Dr. Culbertson. My biggest challenge is really, I would say it comes from being a young professional, especially navigating higher education, because it is different than when I worked as a probation officer or than when I was doing loss prevention. It's very different, very quote unquote political in a sense, but it still definitely has great benefits. One, they're paying for my degree. And so that in itself is, add that onto my salary and it'll make you feel a little bit better when you can get an entire free degree. Just by working for a university and, putting 6 months in and passing your probationary period. The biggest challenge as a young professional is demonstrating to others that, yes, I am younger, but I still have work ethic. Another challenge was being content and not chasing after a dollar amount, kind of like what Alma said, but chasing after a passion or a purpose. It's kind of hard to do that. We have bills. Young people, we tend to have the mindset of, I want to be in the bag, I want to get money, I want to grind, which is all very good things. But one thing I'm learning is if you chase purpose, the money will come along with it. But if you chase money, eventually you might get lost in the money because you're not chasing your purpose anymore. You're just chasing a dollar amount. And then that dollar amount might not even be worth the peace of knowing that what you're doing is in your purpose. So yes, those would be my biggest successes as well as my biggest challenge. As you become young professionals, even those who are graduate assistants, you are young professionals in the higher education system. Um, so just learn from the staff that you work with, be very observant, connect, network, and make the best out of your experience. And also those that are students, this is so side piece, but if you can get a graduate assistantship, I highly recommend it. They also will pay for your degree in the same way that my degree is being paid for, and you also can get a stipend and have a little extra money coming in. So if you didn't know about that, and I found in my position as a counselor, some students actually does not know that it exists, that is a great way to get a master's degree as well as get paid at the same time and get a free degree. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those bits of sage advice. I want to turn it over to Christian.
Hello, everybody. My name is Christian Ortiz. I am the CEO of Mod Atlas Media right here in Columbus, Georgia. I specialize in helping small businesses grow all around the world and focus on smaller communities rather than larger national organizations because the small business is very important to so many areas and local economies all over. So I was able to do that starting basically taking my biggest challenge to me, I think, ended up, oh, there I am. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. My biggest challenge to me was my biggest accomplishment. And what I mean by that, I'm very relatable to a lot of children growing up where I was a terrible student. I didn't really know what was going on with education. I struggled, but growing up in an environment where education was everything to my mother and to my family, I ended up going to college and almost graduating, but figuring out that college wasn't the route that I wanted to take. There was no degree that I saw that really form fitted my personality and my goals, and figuring out what I wanted to do didn't come until way later in life. So my challenges, I didn't find out I was dyslexic until I was 33. So that explained almost my entire childhood. And so as I got into a corporate position, working for a credit card processing company, working there for years at a high position within the company, I decided that it wasn't for me. And I felt like I was dying inside a little bit, working behind the cubicle, and I had more purpose. And I loved what you said about purpose earlier. I think it definitely defines where it takes you in life. And I believe that whether you have a career or you start your own business, if it has purpose, I believe that you can succeed in absolutely anything. So really my challenge was figuring out what I wanted to do, but I took the leap. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just felt that I was in a really bad place, and with no business plan and no financial backing, I literally am that story where I just decided, you know what, I've got to figure it out for myself. And so being that I've been an SME in social media marketing for years, I decided to take that leap, start my own company. And within a month of me doing so, I ended up scoring about 7 clients, knowing that I was exactly where I needed to be. So as a Latino, I take pride in it. I've been in the South for 25 years, and I'm very transparent about my political views. I'm very active in the community. I'm very active with politics, and I believe that it's important to be vocal in as long as humanity is being brought into a point of view. I believe that we can all come to an understanding of where we need to be as a society. So I blend my morality with my business, and I take pride in that. So also one of my biggest challenges was being a minority in an area where many Latinos especially weren't doing big things. and trying to stand out was very difficult. And so, you know, we adapt and we change and we do the best that we can in life. So I've dedicated myself not only to small businesses, but to individuals who strive to do better for themselves, and try to find a better path, whether be it through education or the entrepreneurial route.
Thanks so much for sharing that. I hear some themes among y'all: being flexible, adapting, but also being intentional. And I want to ask the audience right now, who in this room is thinking, maybe uncertain about their major right now, or maybe thinking about changing their major? Anyone? Me, I'm a student right now too. I forgot to introduce myself, by the way. I'm Dr. Megan Arrastia Chisholm, and I'm Associate Professor of Educational Psychology. But like y'all, I'm also going back to school, trying to change paths, right? Trying to connect and help people and be more intentional. So I just want to ask the panelists here, what advice do you have for students who may be thinking about changing majors or maybe uncertain about their field that they've chosen?
You may hear you may hear different you may hear different answers, but this one's mine. This is my opinion. I have been in education for, I was in education for 14 years. I still consider myself an educator because I still get to do it in one way or another. But when I went to school, I had the exact same major for the all 4 years. Well, no, I have my an associate degree in fashion merchandising. I chose that major because that was the only one that the college that I went to, which is actually ABAC down the street, had. Also, coming from being a Latina, being a high school dropout, I recently got my GED. I didn't feel confident in really doing anything else. So I was like, okay. I walked into the office of my undecided advisor. And back then, I was like a punk kid. I was also really poor. So I made my own clothes and I altered them and just cut them up and do different things. So I walked in and she said, I like your skirt. That's kind of cool. And I was like, oh, I made it. And she's like, oh, we have fashion merchandising and, you get to make clothes there. And I was like, oh, that's cool. It's like, I don't do well in math, but I can make a skirt any day. So when I graduated there, I went to Georgia Southern University, where I got my degree, my bachelor's degree in fashion merchandising and apparel design. So I'm a legit fashion designer. And I did an internship in New York. I did not want to live there. I know Georgia's not the mecca for fashion in any way whatsoever. So I didn't want to move. So I used the skills that I learned as far as graphic design through my degree to go into becoming the first webmaster of ABAC. So becoming the webmaster, I picked up a lot more skills. I developed relationships throughout the university. So I had the opportunity to teach a summer class for students in a summer program. So I learned that day or throughout that summer that I really loved interacting with students and teaching. So as soon as I got a chance, I transitioned to another department where it gave me the opportunity to work with minority students and to also work with them one-on-one. And ever since then, I've been working with students. So long story short, your major doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it comes to your passion. I did eventually get my master's degree in higher education, but I wish, I think it would have. I don't think it would have helped me in any way. It would just made me look better on paper, and I just all over the place. But at the end of the day, I was also a administrator. So for me, hiring people, looking at majors, it meant absolutely nothing. I'm looking at an experience. I'm looking at, the person when they talk about what they want to do, what they're applying for that position. If I see the passion, if I hear it from them, why they want to work there, why they are applying for this position, that's what I take into consideration. I don't look at GPA. I don't look at what major they have, does it relate? I mean, there's some jobs that you absolutely have to, like education and nursing and things like that. But other than that, it doesn't matter. I mean, if you're almost graduating and, just stick with it, graduate, get your degree, that's fine. But if you are still, you're still early, you're still trying to figure it out, or you know exactly what you want to do now, change it. You got to look at different things. Can you afford it with your financial aid? Do you have the opportunity to swap majors? Things like that. But for me, doesn't matter. If you don't want to change it, don't change it.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great response. Yeah, I'm similar thinking with Alma. I feel like life is about change in general, and we all have to be flexible. I feel like we have to trust that however we fall, we will land on our feet and we will make the best of it. So if you are unsure, you're unhappy, and you're super close to finishing, I would recommend finishing. I agree. But if you're still, you come in passionate as a freshman and you're like, this is for sure what I'm going to do, and you hate those classes, and it's miserable and it's not calling you, you don't feel it, change. It's okay. My advice is don't do what somebody else thinks is good for you. Don't do something that you think is going to make you look good. Nobody has to live your life but you, so don't live for other people. Don't be afraid to change. That's the theme for life. We're always changing and evolving, and if you're not, that's a problem. So definitely don't feel afraid to change, but do know what calls you. For me, I'm a person of service, so anytime where I'm serving others, or I'm using my skills, like I'm bilingual, how can I help people who need that Spanish? That's what's going to call me. So what calls you? Is it service? Is it building? Is it creating? What is it for you? And the major is kind of secondary, because everybody's going to get a bachelor's. Employers, like Alma said, it's almost like your ticket in. As long as you've shown that you have the ability to complete something, that's what matters. But the actual degree in many circumstances doesn't, unless, like for my field, it's very particular. Like you do need a degree in communication science and disorders to then go on. But my advice is don't fear change. If you don't like it and it's early enough, change.
Okay, so mine is going to be a blend. I actually work in career services. So for this topic, I'm going to consider myself an expert. My first response while I raised my hand so quick was, if you don't know what you want to major in, my response is come to career opportunities. That's our job, is to help you. So we're here to help you. Your advisors help you pick your classes. Career opportunities, we help you align with your skills, your values, and determine what job major based on the majors that are available at VSU would be the best fit for you. And we do it based off what you tell us. We don't pick your major. We don't force a major on you. We just do some assessments to kind of identify and hone in on what it is that you may know, but sometimes it's just a little hard to articulate. So we can kind of pull it out of you. So that's my first response. My second response is, I do share, for instance, my bachelor's degree is in criminal justice, and right now I'm a career counselor. So essentially, there is no connection between criminal justice and higher education on a technical level. However, when employers look, and I work on the employee relations team, so when employers look at resumes, most of the time they just want a bachelor's degree. Even for, we're having our education fair. This is another plug. I plug a lot, by the way, so just, definitely going to represent my office and what we do. So we're having our education fair on the 14th, and even on the flyer it says seeking education and non-education majors, because it's more important that, like you said, you completed something and you have a bachelor's degree. Because say you want to go to graduate school, in order to get into a master's program, usually it's not necessarily a major you have to have. You just have to have a bachelor's degree in something. If you're about to finish, you're in your last semester, my personal professional opinion, please don't change your major. You're there, Only in specific instances where you know that your purpose is something very specific and technical, such as nursing, accounting, something like SLP, speech language pathology. There are some that are very, very specific. But then there's also many careers where you just need to have a bachelor's degree and demonstrate that, one, you can complete something, And two, it demonstrates your intellectual ability by being able to complete a degree. And so I say all that to say, if you don't know what you want to do your major, one, come to career opportunities, of course. And two, just like they said, it's based off your circumstance. What is going to work for you? A lot of times students will ask their peers for advice. Now, I don't want to discourage you from reaching out to your peers for advice. However, I will say, if your friend doesn't know what they want to major in either, it might not be the best person to ask advice on what should your major be. Now, what should you do? I went to career opportunities and they helped me out, so maybe that's what you should do too. You know, it's kind of hard to get advice from somebody who also needs advice on the same topic, because then now y'all both are confused and y'all are confusing each other. So connect them to the right person, which is career opportunities. So yeah, bachelor's degree, they can be very, broad. That's why there's something called interdisciplinary studies. If you don't know exactly what it is you want to do, you can do interdisciplinary studies. If you've already taken a lot of different classes, there's way for them to fit the classes into the concentrations so that you don't go and add another full major and you've already been 3-4 majors in. So there are ways to get done and get completed. But that type of information, unless you know it from somebody, you have to connect to the people on campus that have those answers. So I say all that again to say, come to career opportunities if you haven't been there before, and we'll help you.
Thank you so much for that plug. And Christian, did you have something to add for this?
Yeah, I actually liked everybody's answers because I related to all of them, even Felix's. So, I mean, Phenix, you had a really, really good point. I wish I had you as an advisor or as a mentor when I was going to school, because it was really difficult where I went to the university here. It seemed that even a lot of my advisors didn't really know how to guide me to the right direction. And what I had to figure out was a lot of self-awareness, and I had to be really honest with myself as well. So I implore that everybody, if everybody who's listening to this obviously has wonderful, wonderful individuals that they can reach out to help them figure it out. But there are some who can't fit and who just really don't know. And so I just implore that for those individuals, just to be very self-aware and be very honest with yourself and ask yourself what it is that you truly want to do. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to lift that up, that, if you go and talk to one person about changing your major or changing your career and they don't listen to you, go to the next person, right? And just keep going until you find someone that really understands you and can help you advocate for yourself. Now, here at VSU, I don't know if you've noticed in your classes and all of our programming, we really do encourage critical thinking. So this next question, instead of just saying like, what's your advice, we kind of turned it a little bit on its head. And is there a piece of advice often given in your field that you would now challenge because it's straight up wrong or outdated? Some old advice that you might want to revise and resubmit, or, as you say, challenge?
Well, I've been working with the United Farmworkers Foundation officially for 2 months. So I'm still learning a lot about the organization, but it's completely different than any experience I've ever had, because I get to every single one of my coworkers is Latino. Our meetings are actually in Spanish. So I mean, it's pretty awesome, and it's different, but I do have a lot of experience in higher ed, 14 years. So I'd rather, give a piece of advice in that. And it really could apply to any job in general, really. Is the piece of advice that I would challenge, especially for us Latinos, is we're told, especially here in the South, that if we encounter any issues or any problems, we just need to put our head down, don't say anything, don't make yourself look bad, don't make other Latinos look bad. But I've found that it doesn't help anything. If there's something that is going on in your job, or whatever it is that is wrong, you don't feel that is helping anyone, you definitely need to be outspoken, and you need to say, talk to the right person, your supervisor, about how you feel. Now, you also have to gauge, your job. I mean, obviously, if you want to get paid and all these different things, because then, you might be the only one complaining, and it might, look bad on you. But, again, that's just, that's something that I've found personally, especially as a Latina, is that, there's certain expectations that people have of us, just be quiet, again, put your head down, don't say anything, don't challenge, don't act smart, don't act like you think you know, don't say anything, even if you know the answer, even though you might experience that in class right now. Speak up, be outspoken, if you don't feel like something is going on right, and we're seeing this also in other settings, all across the country right now. It doesn't do anything, it doesn't make anything better to just keep quiet and not say anything when you see something that's wrong. But yes, that's my advice for that.
So in my field, I wasn't really given particular advice, but one of the issues that I did want to bring up that I think my profession, in addition to other professions where they do require master's degree, I have an issue with having to take the GRE as part of like your application into getting into the program. So, they want a score of 1,000. I suck at standardized tests. I always have. They make me anxious. My brain doesn't think that way. Those words that I studied, I don't even use those words. I don't use that math. I think, and research supports this, that the GRE is just not a good measure to accurately determine who's going to be successful in the master's program. So I scored under the 1,000. Thankfully, I had good letters of recommendation from my professors. I worked on their research. So, and I have a unique skill, so I'm bilingual, so that really helped. But that score, I think really is not a good representation. I wish a lot of fields would reconsider why we even use that. I feel like it gatekeeps a lot of Black and brown people out of these professions where we need more diversity. We need more Black and brown people to serve our Black and brown students. It just makes sense. So I feel like that is something that I think as a society we really need to look into why we do that. So that's my response.
Okay. So how many here have heard before, it's not what you know, it's who you know? Okay. So as a career counselor, I will start with that who you know is important. However, who you know is not enough. Not only who you know, but who knows you, one. Two, what do they know about you? Because just because they know about you doesn't mean what they know about you is good or professional or is going to assist you. And three, the what you know is also important because the who you know is going to connect you to the person, which is good. It's going to get you that phone call, that conversation, that meeting. But then what you know, your skills, your credentials, your knowledge is going to support you and elevate you to basically demonstrate to now who you know what it is you can do. So it's not just who you know, who knows you, what they know about you, and then what you know to support and basically demonstrate to who you know now what it is that you can offer. That's something I struggle with because all through college you always hear network, 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 network. Now as a career professional, I know what that means and I can explain it to students. But when I was a student, I was like, I'm shy. I don't even like going up talking to people. How am I supposed to network? I'd rather just sit here, make good grades, sit in the back, be a nerd, and then just go back and do what I got to do. And so I say all that to say it's not just who you know, but I would never discourage anybody from networking because that is one of the skills and that's one of the practices that we teach and develop in students in our office is to network. So it is important, but don't just rely on somebody giving you a connection to somebody because they could connect with you for a meeting, but if you have nothing to fall back on, then what is it? It's in vain. Now, there will be some instances where it is just who you know. Some people are fortunate enough that they can just kind of breeze through and then their parents know the right people and they're good. But unfortunately, for a lot of brown and Black people, that's not the case. And so I say that to encourage you to get all the education you can, to get all the knowledge you can, all the skills you can, whatever form that is. Knowledge does not just come from a degree. You get knowledge through life. You get knowledge through jobs. You get knowledge through experiences and mistakes. So get all that you can so that when you are connected through your networking to who you know, you have something to fall back on and you have a foundation as opposed to just knowing somebody.
Thank you. Turning it over to Christian.
All right. All right, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Sorry about that. My computer is lagging a little bit, so if I cut off a little bit, that's why. For me, I wanted to talk about when a lot of advice, I know I got this growing up as well, is always take the safest or best paid offer for a job. To me, I don't like that right off the rip. I think anybody who's struggled and who's seen the beauty of succeeding after struggling and building from scratch, I think it's a pivotal point and a lesson to learn of what it feels like from starting from the bottom and working your way up. I think there's a huge misconception of I'm going to go to college, I'm going to get a degree, and I'm going to get the best job that there is in my field. And when, it either can happen or most of the time it won't. It just depends on your market and is something that people have to be very honest about. So it's very important to be self-aware and be very humble as an individual and start from the bottom. There's nothing wrong with it, and working your way up, whether it's with the same company or job hopping until you get stepping stones until you get to where you need to be.
Thank you. I just want to lift up a few things that I heard, and as far as, if you see something, say something, right? Not being afraid to have your voice and to advocate for yourself and others, as well as networking is uncomfortable sometimes, right? And network with people that you may not think, you just never know when it's an opportunity. And who may get you in the door, but you have to have your shoes on or whatever. You have to have the skills to back up any opportunity that may come from that. I think our panel has done an awesome job of giving us some sage advice, some tips, some consejos to take home. And we would love it to hear from y'all, right? Any questions that you may have, those of you in the audience, those of you that are online, if you would type your question into the chat, we will definitely ask everyone. And we have here some whoops. I went too close. Okay, further back we had some comments of, just agreeing that it's a very good point about standardized tests, that changes need to be done. So thank you for bringing that up. And we are the change, right? We are the ones that are voting, that are parents and teachers. And another good point, and when creating these networks, it is important to demonstrate good work ethics, so ensuring that we are leaving impact, so leaving that legacy, leaving that change in our individual interactions. And Hustafe said, in high-performing academic institutions, and especially graduate schools, academic writing creates incredible pressure. That is very true, especially if English is not your first language. The stress and this pressure may cover the importance of being bilingual. Can you highlight the importance of being bilingual or benefits you have received in your careers?
Maybe Alma will share the same thing, but being bilingual for me, I can access not only my English-speaking population, but also my Spanish-speaking population, who are typically underserved when it comes to speech and language disorders, parent training, and I'm able to effectively access in a way that those parents and those children can understand. Being bilingual means more money. Whether it's first or second language, I highly recommend being bilingual. Automatically, you are put at the top of the list on resumes. I've done hiring. I've been with companies, helping with their hiring, and that is just a huge skill because we are more and more living in a bilingual, trilingual society. It's so necessary. And for me, like, my Spanish wasn't awesome. I grew up in Texas. They taught us English. I've had to learn as an adult how to better write, how to increase my vocabulary in Spanish. So we have to continue to do that and be the best we can in both, but it opens up so many opportunities. You don't have to really say anything else. Being bilingual, it's like your ticket is like, that is so highly valued in all the fields. My daughter, who's a freshman in college, I'm like, and you know, she's shy to speak Spanish, but I'm like, you know what, it doesn't matter. Learn it, speak it, try your best. That's what's gonna help you help other people. So if you have that opportunity, our society's changing. We need multi-languages like the rest of the world already has.
Yeah, that's kind of hard to follow. I will say, I was a Spanish minor. I am a Mexican American, but I actually did not learn Spanish until I came to the university, and then I studied abroad for 6 months in Spain, which is really where I gained my fluency, because you really are immersed into the language and the culture. But I always encourage my students, if you can minor in a language, even if you can't minor it, if you can learn it, you know, honestly, if you're fluent in it, that has more power than minoring in it. So if you can become fluent in any language, not just Spanish. But one thing I will say about Spanish is the United States is the second largest Spanish speaking country. So that'll show you the prevalence of Spanish where you currently live in the United States. So if you are not, there are a lot of Latinx individuals, some of them, Spanish is their first language, or it could be the first language of their parents, but their parents taught them English as a way to really instill in them kind of like American values, if you will, you know, how to navigate in the United States as an English speaker. And so some of them, their parents only speak Spanish, but then their first language or their main language that they use is English, but they still know Spanish. So whatever your situation is, know both of them. If you've already been introduced to them, it's going to be way easier to learn for you, especially if you're in a family of Spanish speakers. You have organic opportunity to learn Spanish as opposed to going to a classroom. The biggest way that I learned Spanish the best was through the organic stuff. The classes taught me like how to conjugate and stuff, which is good, but I didn't really learn how to converse and have a dialogue with individuals until I had to speak it. And go to Spain and speak with these people in another country. And by the way, Spain Spanish is way different than Latin American Spanish. Of course, even within Latin America, all the different countries, even within the same country, they have different dialects, things like that. So Spanish is very broad. It's not just, okay, we all speak the same Spanish, because that's not the case. But if you can, learn another language. On my resume, that's the first word after my name and stuff. If you are bilingual, put that on your resume. If not, come to Career Opportunities and we'll help you and we'll show you where you can put it at.
Yeah. It sounds like use your languages, whatever you know, and learn more if possible, right? Christian, turn it over to you.
Yeah, I completely agree. Me coming from the hospitality world, retail, and even corporate management, I saw the how much knowing another language, be it Spanish or any other, just helps substantially. I'll be honest, if it wasn't because I knew Spanish as well, I wouldn't have moved up in my last job as quickly as I did. I was a client relations manager, change control specialist, dealing with clients in Puerto Rico and abroad. And so they kind of look at you like you're saving grace when nobody else can communicate with the client. And it's just, it's very, very beneficial. So definitely take advantage of it because it is a skill that will get you so far ahead.
Thank you. And thank you for the question online. Who else in the audience? Oh, here we go.
All right, hey y'all, my name's Octavio Aguado, and I know Spanish is important, and so have you ever felt uncomfortable speaking Spanish in a meeting or a classroom as a Spanish speaker while there's other non-Spanish speakers inside the setting of a meeting or a classroom?
Today? Yeah.
Yes, in a general sense, especially when I first learned the language, I was scared to speak it. Even though I would talk to myself, I would do the little interactive, like online things. But it was just like, am I going to speak it good enough? Even when I worked in retail part-time, they would also always come to me, Phenix, there's a Spanish speaker, even if that wasn't in my department, but they would come get somebody who could translate. Because one, they don't want to lose the sale. And two, if there's somebody there that can translate. And so in doing that, it made me overcome the anxiousness that my Spanish is not good enough, because many of them, they just appreciate the attempt that you're trying to communicate with them. Even if you can get on the mere basic word levels, you usually can kind of get across the point of what it is you're trying to make. And so in terms of higher education, I've never really been in a space where I had to speak Spanish, unless I had to help a student that only spoke Spanish or their English wasn't that great. So most of my Spanish speaking experience came from when I was working in retail, because there's usually never anybody that works there that speaks Spanish. And if there are, they're far and few. So I hope that answers your question. And I feel like Alma would be a great person to answer this, because you just said that all your meetings are in Spanish now. So I'm going to pass the mic to.
Yes. Okay. So when I came to the U.S., I was 11. Everybody speaks Spanish in the Texas Valley, which is right on the border with Mexico. So I didn't really have to learn when I was there, because everybody spoke Spanish. When I came to Georgia, I was one of the few kids that didn't know English. So I pretty much, I learned English in about 7 months. It took a while to get people to understand me, because my accent was pretty strong. But ever since then, I speak Spanish in very limited times, mostly with my family, which is not here. So I only practice my Spanish, or used to practice my Spanish about maybe twice a week. When I worked here, just in my career in higher ed, Spanish very sporadically. But because of that, I actually forgot a lot of my Spanish, believe it or not, because I wasn't constantly practicing. I truly at one point felt mediocre in both languages for some reason. But now, working with the United Farmworkers Foundation, many of my coworkers actually don't speak English. There's a lot of organizers on the ground in California that there's no need for them to learn English or speak English, so they speak Spanish. So in many of our meetings, they're conducted in Spanish for that reason, to accommodate them, which is great. I speak Spanish now every single day, whether it's through my colleagues, my boss. It's just automatic now. When I'm on the phone with somebody from my organization, we just automatically switch to Spanish. So that's another plus that I love, because I feel more comfortable speaking Spanish. So yes. By the way, I felt the shade earlier, because my son doesn't speak Spanish, which is terrible. By the way, when my son was 3, I took him to the pediatrician, and she said that I spoke to him specifically, just nothing but Spanish from the moment he was born to the moment he was 3. But his pediatrician said, oh, he's behind in his language. He's about, 3 months behind. And I was like, your parent freaking out, but it's my fault. I don't know what I did. And then I switched to Spanish, and after that, to English. And after that, I could never get it back. And it was just like, I don't know. It's I know. And then she didn't correct me either. I was like, it's my fault. She was like, yeah, maybe. And I was like, oh. But anyway, yeah. But it's never too late. It's never too late. No, so I know who to contact now.
Just checking in with you, Christian.
I'm good.
Okay. Any other questions on the audience? Yes, in the back.
So, yeah, I just had a question. I know there was a comment earlier about the GRE, the requirement of the GRE. Yeah, okay, thank you. So I'm curious to know what your thoughts are, because, there's two schools of thought on that one. Like, of course, there's the one where, does it really give you the information that it needs to? Is it biased? But there's probably lots of truth to that. And then there's the other side, which a lot of people say, well, there's the norming factor, right? So it's that one thing that everybody has that's at least kind of the same. But so I know that there's not controversy, but certainly various conversations around it. What are your thoughts about maybe requiring it, but maybe offering more options for testing for graduate programs? For example, I know here at VSU, Like I got my doctorate from here a number of years ago, and at the time I did it, which is not super long ago, but it's about 10 years. When I started, they only allowed the GRE as the entry test. And since then, they have added the MAT, which is quite a different test from what I understand. I've never taken it, but I heard it's, maybe a little bit broader, perhaps whatever. So what are your thoughts on maybe that as kind of, splitting the difference, if you will, of not requiring something, but not necessarily mandating the GRE?
And for those of you that haven't heard, the MAT is the Miller's analogy test. So instead of having the verbal and quantitative portions of that standardized test, it's just analogies. Not that. So the question was, what are your thoughts about having just more options instead of just the GRE as that requirement? There are other things, portfolios.
Well, actually, when I was doing an interview for a PhD program, the person interviewing me, I told her, I was like, I'm a terrible test taker. And she actually gave me some great information. I told her, I was like, I'm a terrible test taker. And she said, well, we require the GRE, but we don't really look at the score. We mostly look at where you're lacking. So for example, if you take it and your score is low in the math, then we know that once we accept you, we're gonna have to provide more support to maybe, more support in the statistics classes or things like that, so that, because you're lacking the math area. So that made sense to me a little bit, but I was like, well, still, anything can affect that score. So it's not, it's not the greatest, but I mean, to me, that made a little bit more sense. So as long as I think, and I don't think they want to advertise it freely, but if that's what they're using it for, I mean, I'm okay with it a little bit. But yes, I took the Miller's analogies test as well. Yeah, I know. I don't see how that could predict anything for my career, in my master's degree, because I think my score was just barely like normal, I guess, compared to everybody else, maybe slightly lower. But my GPA in the program was a 4.0. So yeah, it didn't really say anything, but whatever.
There's another question online too.
Yeah, that was great.
The question online here is, some events in media, for example, the attacks in Asian communities, or some of our experiences can be extremely difficult to handle. How to maintain psychological well-being as mandatory and keep offering good to our communities? How can we take care of ourselves given all the trauma that various communities, including our own, are experiencing? This is just my plug, right, for the counseling center here at VSU, that they offer face-to-face and online virtual one-on-one and group counseling. And this is not something to whisper about or to ignore, that, life is hard. College is even harder. And given, college during this time of violence, of murder, of uncertainty, right, that hits you in the gut, please use our services if you haven't already. Yes, absolutely. Oh, yes. Well, we want to say bye to Christian and thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Christian. We appreciate you.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much.
And we'll listen to your podcast. Bye.
Bye.
Not hang up, but log off.
In terms of self-care looks different for everybody. I'm glad that Megan, or Dr. Megan rather, I always pronounce your last name wrong, Chisholm.
Yep, you got it.
Dr. Chisholm.
Yeah.
I'm glad that she plugged in the counseling center, because it is there for you. Everything is protected. Your identity, what's discussed, all that is protected. And should anybody divulge that, it does come with tons of ramifications. So you are protected in that regard. So if you're going through stuff, don't be afraid. You don't have to have experienced a large specific trauma to need a therapist or a counselor. And that's okay. Just going through life alone is enough to need a counselor and to have somebody to communicate and share your thoughts and your feelings, and they give you good coping mechanisms and strategies. So don't be ashamed or afraid to utilize those services. My self-care personally, on a outside of a spiritual side, I like to shop. I like to get a male manicure and pedicure. And I also like to get a good haircut and my eyebrows threaded. That is what I do for self-care.
Self-care.
And I like to travel. Now, that does come with a financial side of that. But that is how I do my self-care. But like I said, self-care looks different for everybody. So I'm going to pass the mic. Maybe you have some more strategic ways of self-care.
Well, I just wanted to start by, like, I guess one of my biggest pieces of advice, and I think what has contributed a lot to my success professionally is dealing with some of that childhood trauma and issues. Like, I grew up a poor kid, Latina, in a super white, rich neighborhood. I didn't feel like I belonged. That was a really kind of traumatic experience. My mom was a single mom. My dad was an abusive alcoholic who wasn't really around. And so I had to carry all that and then go to college. And, sometimes some of that hardship really affects you. It affects your confidence. It gives you anxiety. It makes you depressed. It makes you second guess yourself. And so I feel like whether, if you've encountered anything like that, definitely don't forget to take care of that part. Reach out, get counseling, read up on it. There's so many resources available that can help you. But if you pretend like that never happened and that's not impacting why you do what you do today, you're really kidding yourselves. So definitely look into that. And I know that they have a therapy counseling center here that's free and available to everybody. Definitely use it. I feel like the more you know about yourself, the better you can challenge, like, okay, why am I scared to network? Why can't I go up and speak to that professor? It really helps with increasing your self-awareness. And honestly, to me, that's the biggest gift you can give to yourself is that self-awareness and knowing that you're okay. There's no right way to do life, but definitely seek to continue to improve yourself and take care of yourself. I like to run. I like to be active. I love gardening. I love going to the beach. I love anything with water. Find your happy spot. Do it on a daily. Don't cut yourself short. Sleep, eat well, drink your water. All those small habits, they add up, and they don't always have to cost money. I wish I had mani-pedi money, but you know what? I have a daughter in college.
Yeah. And just to underscore, like, this is the only time therapy is going to be free in your whole life. So just include it as part of the tuition, okay?
Yes. Well, the cool thing about working for a union organization that's affiliated with a union is that I get union insurance. Yes. So $50 a month, completely covered in every single way. I think it's like $50 deductible. It's like free therapy. So it's awesome. But anyway, it's been for us, Latinos, it's definitely going to be hard in many ways. I think we're dealing with a lot of it right now, with everything that's going on in the country, racism and things like that. And, I, for a while, maybe a few months ago, I was definitely, or maybe a few years ago, I was dealing with racism and, being isolated by certain people. And not too long after that, we dealt with the pandemic. And then we dealt with Black Lives Matter. So even though I had already been dealing with racism and, isolation, it really took a toll on me, emotionally and mentally. And I definitely had to seek help. I've been in therapy many, many times throughout my life to deal with different things. But I've found that for me, just sharing my story with people is my form of therapy because, for me, nothing against therapists, I still do it. But, talking to somebody one-on-one, putting my story in a drawer is great, but I also wanted to help somebody else in the meantime. Mm-hmm. So I like to share my story for that reason with many, many people. But also, life still happens, life still goes on. So, you know, I feel that I don't win anything by just, you know, wallowing in, you know, my misery or anything like that. I love exercise. I love eating healthy. I love staying active. I love shopping. I love getting manicures. So all of that I can vouch for is great.
Thank you so much. Yeah. I just want to say that this is exactly what we're doing today. Thank you for sharing your stories, right? And your consejos and giving us a piece of you and letting us learn with you and from your stories. Thank you so much. Without further ado, we'll wrap it up. Thank you. Bye. Yes, please take the food.